Welcome to the Temple of Scrolls, where documents dating back to the beginning of time are recorded and kept. These scrolls contain the sum of our wisdom from the past. Come, I will show you one. Herein are tales to advise both powerful kings and their lowly subjects. They are fables of an animal nature, strangely similar to its human counterpart. These tales of human greed and inhuman punishment are told as lessons for you to learn. Choose one now and listen.
The birds, the beasts, and the bat. The horse, the hunter, and the stag. The birds, the beasts, and the bat.
There was a time when the birds and the beasts went to war against one another. In the middle of the war, the birds passed by a solitary bat seated on his perch. "Come join us in our fight," the birds asked the bat. But the bat merely replied, "I am a beast." And so the birds went on without him. Later, as the beasts passed by the bat, they said, "Come join us in our fight." But this time the bat replied, "I am a bird." And so the beasts went on too. The bat was quite pleased with himself for staying out of the war. But then something unexpected happened. The birds and the beasts made peace. The war was over. When he learned of the agreement, the bat flew to the bird celebration and asked if he could join in. But the birds wanted nothing to do with him. "You did not join us in battle. You may not join us in victory." The bat felt outcast, but he had an idea. He flew to the beast celebration and asked if he could join them. But the king of the beasts replied, "You did not join us in battle. You may not join us in victory." And with that, the beasts chased the bat away. Ever since that day, the bat lives in caves and hollow trees by day, not daring to show his face until night. Because he realized, too late, that he who is neither one thing nor the other has no friends. He who is neither one thing nor the other has no friends. If you are not a friend in bad times, you will have no friends in good times. Remember, real friends stay together at all times.
The horse, the hunter, and the stag.
A horse and a stag got into an argument over which of them ruled the plain. The horse insisted, "I was here first," and the stag replied, "What of it? I am stronger and faster than you are." Frustrated, the horse went to the hunter to ask for help. The hunter said yes, "But if you want to defeat the stag, I'll have to place a piece of iron between your jaws so I can guide you." The horse was so angry with the stag that he was willing to do anything. "And I must put a saddle on your back so I can keep steady as I ride you." The horse agreed to this too. Soon he was saddled and bridled, the saddle on his back and the bit in his mouth. Together the horse and the hunter removed the stag from the plain forever. Finished with their work, the horse said to the hunter, "Thank you for your help. Now please remove these painful objects from my mouth and back." But the hunter refused. "Sorry, my friend. Now that I've bridled and saddled you, I intend to keep you that way. You can be of great use to me." And from that day on, the horse was controlled by the hunter. Because if you allow others to use you for your own purposes, they will use you for theirs. If you allow others to use you for your own purposes, they will use you for theirs. People are often caught in traps which they set for others. Scheme with someone to hurt someone else, and there may be a second victim to your scheme: you.
The wolf in sheep's clothing.
There was a hungry wolf who wanted to prey on a nearby flock of sheep. But a shepherd and his dogs watched over the flock, and the wolf had no opportunity to strike. Until one day, the wolf found the skin of a sheep that had been left out to dry by the shepherd. By putting the sheepskin over its own fur, the wolf was able to join the sheep in the pasture undetected. The shepherd and his dogs did not notice anything odd about the flock, and the wolf delighted in how clever he was. That night, when the flock was penned in, the wolf roamed among the sheep, deciding which one he would pick for his dinner. But at the same time, the shepherd entered the pen to find himself some dinner too. "Which cut of mutton will I eat tonight?" wondered the shepherd, as he grabbed the wolf, thinking he was a sheep, and slit his throat with a knife, proving that he who tries to fool others may end up being fooled himself. He who tries to fool others may end up being fooled himself. A wolf in sheep's clothing is a person who pretends to be nice, but, like the hungry wolf, isn't. Beware of a wolf in sheep's clothing, and never be one yourself.
The mice in council.
One day, the mice called a meeting. Everyone there was in an uproar. "We must do something about that cat," said one of the mice. "We can never really enjoy our lives until he stops stalking us. Let's set a trap for him. We should tie his tail to a tree, throw him to the dogs." In spite of their anger, the mice could not think of a solution to their problem until one young mouse arose and made a bold proposal. "We should tie a bell around the cat's neck. Then we'll always know when he's coming." "Hurrah! Hurrah! Great! Fantastic!" shouted the other mice. They cheered and called the young mouse brilliant, a genius, a hero. And in short order, a bell was sent for. When it arrived, the council of mice met again and gave it their heartiest welcome. The bell would be the end of all their troubles. But when the hubbub died down, The oldest mouse held up his paw for silence. Having heard our young friend's ingenious suggestion, I must say I can see how perfect it would be. Belle the cat and our futures will be secure. But I have one small question for our hero. Which one of us will volunteer to put the bell around the cat's neck? The other mice groaned when they realized the truth, which is that it is one thing to suggest an action, but quite another thing to carry it out. It is one thing to suggest an action, but quite another thing to carry it out. Some ideas are easier said than done, because an idea is a solution only if you can do something with it. So beware of easy answers to difficult problems.
The Frogs Desiring a King.
The marsh was a very happy place for the frogs who lived there. They bothered no one, and no one bothered them. But some of the frogs thought they needed a king and a constitution, saying, "It's only right." So that night they gathered together and called on their god, Zeus. "Send us a king, almighty Zeus! We frogs deserve our own ruler."
A king, you say? King of the frogs? Well, foolish frogs, if that's what you want, here's your king.
And with that, a log dropped down into the swamp. It made quite an impression as the frogs jumped in all directions. They hid on the bank and watched. They watched for hours, and when they observed that the log did not move, the boldest of the frogs went to investigate. And when they saw that it still did not move, the brave hero of the frogs became even bolder. Soon, the frogs were so used to the log, they didn't even notice it was there. But some of the frogs still wanted a king, so they sent another message to Zeus. This time the message said, "Almighty Zeus, we frogs want a real king who will rule over us. We want one now." Zeus did not like being told what to do, and he said,
Foolish frogs, if you demand a king, I'll give you a king.
So Zeus sent a stork down to the swamp, which quickly began gobbling up all the frogs there. The frogs soon wished they had never demanded a king, but it was too late. An angry Zeus gave them one last word of advice.
Foolish frogs, don't you know? For leadership, look to yourself, not others.
For leadership, look to yourself, not others. It is sometimes easier to allow others to make your decisions for you. But if you give up your freedom of choice, you may not get it back again.
The Mazes. play all the fables. The Dog and His Shadow.
A dog stole a juicy cut of meat from a butcher's shop and was very pleased with himself. On his way home to dine on the meat, he crossed over a river and caught a glimpse of his own shadow reflected in the water. The dog thought, "Another dog with another piece of meat. I can grab that meat and have enough for 2 days." But when the dog snapped at the meat in the reflection, he dropped the meat he had in his mouth. It sank to the bottom of the river. The dog jumped in after it. Before long, he was fighting for his life and barely managed to make it to shore. He would return home very wet and very hungry. If only he had remembered that he who desires to have another man's good often loses his own. He who desires to have another man's good often loses his own. So be very careful not to lose what you have in trying to get what someone else has. By wanting too much, you may end up with nothing.
The Lion, the Fox, and the Beasts.
For many years, the old lion was respected and feared for his strength, speed, and cunning mind. He was king of the jungle. So it was a surprise when the lion sent word by his messenger to all the other creatures. "He's sick and near death," said the messenger. The lion would no longer be able to leave his cave, so the other animals should no longer fear him, but rather should visit him to hear his last will and testament. "Bah! Our king dying?" wondered the goat, who decided he must go and hear the lion's last wishes. And so the goat entered the lion's cave and was inside for a very long time. The sheep, too, worried that the old lion was not well, went into the cave. While the sheep were still inside, the calf entered the cave too. And so it continued that the deer followed the calf, and the ducks followed as well. After a long period of time, the lion, looking perfectly healthy, emerged from his cave. He seemed very surprised to see the fox lingering outside. The lion asked, "Fox, why haven't you come inside to pay your respects yet?" The fox replied, "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I could not help noticing all the tracks leading inside, but there are no tracks coming back out again. I will not go in until all the animals that entered your cave come out." The fox then trotted a safe distance from the lion, because he was clever enough to know that it is easier to get into the hands of the enemy than to get out again. It is easier to get into the hands of an enemy than to get out again. If you are a clever person, you will learn carefully from the bad things that happen to others and make sure the same thing doesn't happen to you. Always look before you leap.
The Fox and the Crow.
A crow with a piece of cheese in her beak flew through the air, while below, a crafty fox licked his chops and thought, "That's a tasty morsel for me, and I know how to get it." The fox went to the foot of the tree and spoke to the crow in a sweet voice. "Good morning, Lady Crow. My, you're looking well today, feathers shiny, eyes bright. If only the beauty of your voice matched the beauty of your appearance." Upon hearing this request, the crow fluffed her feathers and held her head higher, so the fox continued, "If I could hear you sing, I have no doubt that your voice is the fairest sound of all birds." The crow could not resist such praise. She began to caw. But the moment she opened her beak, the cheese dropped out and the fox quickly gobbled it up. Unaware that she had lost her food, the crow continued singing. The fox, having gotten what he wanted, could stand no more of the noise. "Enough of that wretched racket," he cried. "You're hurting my ears." With that, the surprised crow went silent, and the sly fox scampered away. If he had really cared for the crow, he would have given her this advice: never trust flatterers, for flattery is the food of fools. Never trust flatterers, for flattery is the food of fools. To flatter is to praise someone too much without really meaning it. Sometimes people say nice things just to get on your good side. If you believe that someone is flattering you, think about what that person may want in return, and if you want to give it to him.
The Wolf and the Lamb.
A wolf was drinking from a stream on a hillside when he looked up and saw a lamb also drinking downstream. The little lamb looked quite delicious, so the wolf thought of an excuse to grab him. "Hey, what do you think you're doing, young lamb, muddying my drinking water that way?" The lamb, though timid and afraid, replied, "Sir, the water may be muddy, but not because of me. You see, it runs down from you to me, not the other way around." This reply, though reasonable, did not deter the wolf, who moved closer and spoke again. "Young lamb, tell me, why did you call me a bad name last year?" "Sir, I could not have called you a bad name then, as I am only now 6 months old. I was not alive last year." Again, the wolf did not want to hear what the lamb was saying. He moved closer still, bared his teeth, and said, "Young lamb, if it was not you who called me the name, it was your father, and that is close enough for me." With that, the wolf leapt upon the poor lamb and gobbled him up, as it was his plan all along, because a tyrant will always find an excuse for his tyranny. A tyrant will always find an excuse for his tyranny. A tyrant is a bad person who uses his power over others in an unfair way. And while he always finds excuses to make his unfairness appear right, it is never right to mistreat others. Be sure not to mistreat others unless you want to be called a tyrant too.
The Grasshopper and the Ant.
was a glorious summer day, and the grasshopper was singing and chirping, chirping and singing. What a grand day! What a splendid day! Suddenly, the grasshopper saw an ant passing by, struggling to carry a kernel of corn. The grasshopper spoke to the ant. "Greetings, friend ant. Why not stop and chat a while? It's too beautiful a day to waste working so hard." But the ant shook his head and said, "I cannot stop and chat. I must store up food for the winter ahead. I suggest you do the same." The grasshopper laughed at the ant's words. "Winter? Oh, that's months away, and I have plenty of food for now." But the ant did not stop his work. He toiled and struggled all that day, and the next, and the next. While the grasshopper sang and hopped to his heart's content, the days moved swiftly toward winter. One cold and frosty morning, the grasshopper saw the ant again and he spoke. "Friend ant, could you spare some food for a hungry grasshopper?" The ant scowled at the grasshopper. "Sir, you sang all summer and now you can dance all winter. I will not give up my hard-earned food." And so the grasshopper sadly turned away, realizing for the first time that in good times it is best to set something aside for bad times. In good times, it is best to set something aside for the bad times. If you do not plan ahead, do not expect others to plan for you. What you do today affects what happens to you tomorrow.
The Swallow and the Other Birds.
A group of birds watched as a farmer planted seeds in a field. One of the birds, a swallow, became very nervous and said, "Beware of that man. He is dangerous." But the other birds laughed and called the swallow an alarmist. "But he is dangerous," insisted the swallow. "We must pick up every seed he sows, or we will all be destroyed. Come, help me." And so the swallow went to pick up the seeds. But no matter how hard she tried, no one bird could get them all. The other birds laughed even harder. "Why is she getting in such a bother over a few seeds?" one of them wondered. The swallow returned and insisted that she was not exaggerating the danger. "Those are hemp seeds, which will turn into plants. The plants will be harvested and turned into cord, which will be woven into nets, and the nets will be used to capture birds like us." Sometime later, the very bird who had laughed the most was caught in a net made from the plants that had grown from the hemp seed. "I am so sorry I didn't listen," he told the swallow. And the swallow replied, "I tried to warn you. You must destroy the seed of evil, or it will grow up to destroy you." You must destroy the seed of evil, or it will grow up to destroy you. Do not ignore small problems. Small problems become big ones. Solve them before they grow too large to ever solve.
The Hare and the Tortoise.
The hare was a boasting sort of fella. He loved to brag that he was faster than any other animal. One day, he told a group of them, "It's true, you know. I haven't been beaten once, and I challenge anyone to try." When the slowest animal of all, the tortoise, stepped forward, the hare was amazed. The tortoise declared, "I accept your challenge. I will race you, hare." The hare's amazement turned to laughter. "You must be joking. I could beat you running backwards." "You can do your bragging after the race," said the tortoise. And so the next day, the other animals lined up to set a race course. The owl said, "Hoo, hoo, get ready, get set, go!" And they were off. The hare ran so fast that he disappeared from view while the tortoise moved forward at a crawl. It didn't seem like much of a contest to the other animals. It didn't seem like much of a contest to the hare either. He was so far ahead of the tortoise that he sat in the shade and took a nap. After all, the tortoise wouldn't catch up to him for hours. Meanwhile, the tortoise continued along the course, barely moving, but never stopping. He just went on and on and on and on. Eventually, the hare woke up refreshed from his nap. "Whew, time to finish this so-called race," said the hare, yawning. But his yawn became a gasp when he looked up and saw the tortoise fast approaching the finish line. The hare ran as fast as he could, but he couldn't catch up to the tortoise. The tortoise won. The crowd of animals cheered him. The hare exclaimed, "I just can't believe it. How could this happen?" The tortoise turned toward the hare and explained, "There's no animal faster than you, hare, but slow and steady wins the race." Slow and steady wins the race. The hare had speed and ability to burn, but to be a winner, you must keep at it. Always be persistent to achieve your goal, and don't get caught napping.
The Mystery of Aesop's Fables. The Animal Characters. A fable is a brief tale in which animals speak and act like humans, usually to teach a lesson about human behavior. In Aesop's fables, each animal is used to represent a particular characteristic or set of characteristics of human nature. To learn more about the human character of each animal as Aesop portrayed it, move your marker to the picture of that animal and press an action button. Bat. A bat represents a shadowy, two-faced person who cannot be depended upon as a friend. Swallow and the Other Birds. The swallow is more intelligent and exhibits greater foresight than the other birds. He knows well that what happens today can affect what happens tomorrow. Mouse. Mice represent ordinary people. Although small and threatened by the size and power of larger animals, mice can, when called upon, be thoughtful, dependable, and even heroic. Ant. An ant is an industrious hard worker who plans for the future. Fox. The fox is always clever, especially in his pursuit of food. Lion. The lion is the majestic king of beasts, representing both the nobility and awesome power of rulers. He evokes fear and obedience in others, sometimes using his power ruthlessly to achieve his ends. Tortoise. Though slow and plodding, the tortoise is a steady worker who never gives up. Horse. The horse is fast and competitive, but easily tricked and enslaved by man. Wolf. The wolf is most often a predator, preying upon the weak for his own advantage. Although he uses cunning and cleverness, he is capable of being outwitted by anyone wise enough to know his bad motives. Hare. The boastful hare, or rabbit, may be quick off the mark, but he is also apt to make big miscalculations. Crow. The crow is always involved in getting his food and water. He can be very clever about it, except when his vanity is appealed to by flattery and he loses what he has. Stork. The stork appears as a very clever bird who can be an instrument of the gods against others. Grasshopper. The grasshopper is a carefree creature content to fritter away his days in fun, heedless of what the future may bring. Lamb. The poor lamb is an innocent victim who never understands why others might want to take advantage of him. Frogs. Frogs are depicted as foolish and vain. They think they're more than they are and also less than they could be. Dog. Dogs are greedy for food, even to the point of being willing to be enslaved to get it. The Mystery of Aesop's Fables. The origin of humankind's ancient fables remains shrouded in mystery. Fables from olden times have been found to exist in cultures around the world, from ancient Egypt to India, from historic Persia to Greece. In India, the Hindus were among the earliest and greatest of fablers. Their fables were used for centuries as a means of educating young people. The Hindu fables are attributed to a man known as Bidpai, sometimes known as Pilpay, which means the favorite. According to legend, Bidpai became court philosopher to the Hindu king, advising him on how to handle the many problems confronting his rule. When the king requested that Bidpai write down his ideas on government, the result was 12 books of fables, of which 5 survive and are known as the Book of 5 Headings. Originally designed as political lessons for a king, the fables survive today as moral lessons for children. Meanwhile, in the world of Western culture, whose beginning was in Greece, one man has been most associated with the telling of fables, and that is the man they call Aesop. It is unlikely that Aesop read Bidpai's Book of Five Headings, since at that time books were handwritten and not many copies existed. But it is probable that Aesop heard Bidpai's tales told by travelers coming from India, because there are many similarities between Bidpai's and Aesop's fables. As for Aesop, not much is known about him. Most scholars believe that he was an African born in Greece around the year 620 BC. Many accounts picture him as a hunchback, while others claim that he had a speech impediment. Early in his life, Aesop was a slave living in the household of a family called Jadman. But his master was so impressed with Aesop's wit and wisdom that Aesop was given his freedom. He became famous for his fables, and King Croesus chose the former slave to travel throughout his kingdom to solve the political problems that arose in the many Greek republics. The story is told that Aesop was sent to Delphi to distribute gold among the citizens. When he arrived, he was disgusted by the greediness of the Delphians and refused to release the money with which he was entrusted. When the people learned that Aesop had sent the money back, they threw him over a cliff, killing him. Sometimes the accuracy of what we know about Aesop is disputed, and the mystery of Aesop and how he created his fables may never be solved. But one thing is certain: in the Western world, his name has been associated with the wisdom of the dark fables for over 2,600 years. The mazes.
The meanings of the stories are clear. Take heed of the wisdom in these fables, or suffer the consequences. And remember, this temple of scrolls is always open. I'll be waiting for you here.